Hey everybody, this is Anomaly Questionable Movies, our special 100th episode. We made it to 100 episodes. I'm Dan,
And I'm Ron.
and today we have a very, very special guest for our 100th episode. We have one of America's greatest living filmmakers, Charles Burnett. Great to have you.
It's a pleasure. I must apologize for last time because I was confused. So
It's all good. I mean, I was just waiting for a time zone thing to happen. We've been pretty lucky with that so far.
Yeah. One time we had it in the reverse, and it was somebody in Texas, I think.
Yeah, I think
we
so.
showed up and yeah, what's going on? Where? So I realized about 15 minutes in what happened. So
good.
So it's not the first.
So
I have that problem with my coworkers too, because we live all over the country, actually all over the world. So
wow, okay.
We forget sometimes. Yeah.
So how you doing?
Well, I'm okay. And today's kind of a special day because of the trial that was happening in Georgia that was resolved today, and so that came out very nicely. So yeah. I think everyone can feel, at least most of us anyway, can feel good about it. So.
And definitely better than what the ruling that came down.
Yeah.
Just a few days ago.
Yeah. Awful.
Yeah. That was unbelievable. So sometimes justice is served.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. So I guess we'll ask you about some of your films. So we watched I think 5 films to get ready for this. We watched Killer of Sheep, My Brother's Wedding, To Sleep with Anger, Glass Shield, and Finding Buck McHenry. And then we watched some trailers, and actually Ron was going to ask you about oh God, what was the name? I saw the trailer for it, but the pandemic movie you were making about Los Angeles. Yeah.
A Power to Heal? Yes, documentary. That was Barbara Burney, who's responsible for that. She's was teaching and also involved in medicine and so forth. And she invited me to come along with her to make this movie, which is, I mean, the subject matter is really unknown to a large extent. You know, they have, the boycotts and the restaurants and things like that. But having hospitals not treat people is just unbelievable. Yeah. So a lot of people don't understand what happened, or realize how sick that is, but anyway, yeah. But you guys had me at an advantage because I haven't seen a lot of these films in a while, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, someone's asked me about the names of some of these characters, and I'm gonna draw a blank, but anyway.
All right, well, we'll try to keep it vague.
We need you to provide a full scene-by-scene synopsis with every character and every bit of dialogue from every film you've ever made. So
it's going to be a short interview. It's going to be very short. I'm going to come off looking like an idiot. Because it's hard to watch your films over and over, and they're not shown that often, and so yeah. I mean, there's more people who know more about my films than I do, so I think that's generally the case. That's generally the case with filmmakers.
Yeah. Oh, I guess that means they made it out there somehow. But yeah, so I guess so maybe.
I'll tell you that Dan's been telling me about Killer of Sheep for
as long as
I've known him. I've known Dan for about 3 or 4 years, and I don't know how many times he's brought it up. So.
Yeah, we've been waiting to do this episode for a while for sure.
Okay. Well, good. Appreciate that.
Yeah, so I guess how did you get started? How did you first get involved in filmmaking?
It was I've always watched films, and I never thought I was going to be a filmmaker. However, the strange thing was that I always wanted to shoot like a camera or something, still or Super 8 or something like that. And so I had the first opportunity. I was working at this car wash near the LA airport, and it's right over the landing pad, and it's like my house was under the landing pad as well, because it was right in line with the Los Angeles International Airport. And so I was watching these airplanes fly over all the time, and saw the evolution of them, went from pellet driven to jet, Anyway, So a friend of mine he worked in the car wash at the same time I did, and he had this regular camera and regular 8 camera. And so that was the first time I picked up a moving camera, and I shot this airplane going over, and it was, I guess you can say it was exciting because, it was something I always wanted to do. But then I always wanted to, and not always, but when I got a job at the library downtown, the Central Library, I was in a magazine pool. So they had these wonderful magazines, particularly, black and white photographers and things like that. So, and in the evenings, I would be in this magazine pool, it'd be upstairs in the 9th floor or something. I forget what floor it was, or 6th floor or something like that. And you'd be up there all by yourself, delivering magazines to patrons down below in some in rooms, like history and things like that. And so I would have the time to just look through all these old journals, and I got really interested in photojournalism and things like that. A lot of old photographers in black and white during the 30s, whatever it is, but I majored in electronics. I was going to school, and so this sort of threw you into these vocational classes, because they didn't think you're going to be anything else, So that's what I did, and so I went to junior college and got involved in electronics and stayed in there. But I was lucky enough to get into this creative writing class with Isabel Ziegler, and she sort of introduced me to literature and things like that. And so I got interested in that and started drifting toward writing, stuff like that. And so when I finished electronics, I decided I'd take the risk and get into cinematography. SC and UCLA were the only ones at that time in the LA area that had schools that dealt in those subjects. And so I went to USC because I tried to get into USC because it was closer. And I couldn't get in because I couldn't pay the tuition. I tried to get a loan, and because I thought I was eligible because I didn't have any bills, I paid everything in cash, and I found out that was the worst kind of credit you can have. It's not having a record of paying your bills. Right. And so we argued on and on and on about, well, you're not qualified. I said, what are you talking? But well, you don't have any credit. I said, that's good, isn't it? I don't owe anybody, so I can be able to pay you. And it shows that I paid, but they wouldn't accept it. No, you have to have debt. And so I called up UCLA, and they said, and they were just really gracious. They said, come on over, welcome arms, be happy to have you. When they're just like, I was glad I did, actually. And so that got me involved in filmmaking and so forth. And I didn't have a clue, because one of the things is, in that time, in the 60s, there was no one of color basically in film, or they never encouraged it. And the reason I really gravitated towards film, because when I was going to high school and junior high, there were such bad schools. And I remember being very conscious of it. And I said, walking home, I want to write about this, because they didn't encourage you. In fact, the teacher, in fact, in both high school and junior high, there was two of these classes where the teacher said to me and a bunch of other students, you're not going to be anything, you're not going to be anything. And that was very painful. And I said, this is awful, I'm going to say something about this. I made that promise. And of course, then over the years, you forget about it. And then you find out, well, why you're in school? Well, I thought, well, because I wanted to say something. And so I went back to that moment where I was told that, I wasn't going to be anything, and that in a sense, like Africans make art, they pointed to Egypt, they're saying Egypt have these flat figures where they don't have any sense of dimension and all this stuff. And then when I went to Egypt, I was just blown away by the architecture. Everything they did was amazing. So, and I was so disappointed. And that even further increased my notion about, you got to say something about how you are, they create these distorted visions of who you are, and so anyway, those are the encouraging points what got me into really wanting to do something social and things like that.
And so when you got to UCLA, how long was it until you started working on your first feature?
Well, you take these classes in film history and things like that. You start there, and it's about a year and a half or something like that before you start being able to really make films or get in film production. And they start off with the basics, you know, with regular 8 or Super 8, and then after you do that, and if you pass, you know, that test, you know, that you can have some knowledge of making a film, you know.
And so you're going to UCLA. What
Mhm.
In the early courses, what films were they teaching? Like what?
They were teaching everything, you know, all the, of course, American films, you know, all the class. In Birth of a Nation, of course, you know, was one of the standout things, and of course that was another thing that moved me and to make films in a certain way, you know, responding to that. But it was, but one of the great things about UCLA, it was really open and encouraging. I mean, they let you do what you wanted to do, and of course they didn't want you to do features because it took up all the equipment and things and time. And they tried to get you to do short films, but all the students there were sort of, you know, radical to some extent, you know, and was going to do what they wanted to do, you know, and so, and it was very nice because you had to work on other people's films, you know. So I worked on a diverse group of people, you know, with a diverse group of people, and so that helped a great deal. And you were, you know, one of the things about going there is that you were able to explore all aspects of filmmaking. You know, you can do sound, you can do camera, and all this sort of thing. And they encourage you to, you have an opportunity, go out and bring us back something we haven't seen, you know. And you really had to think about, you know, coming back with something that was uniquely yours, you know. And so that was a good thing because they had that attitude where encouraged you to be creative, you know. And they didn't train you just like to be a cameraman or to be a sound person. You made those choices yourself, you know. But they wanted you to make a film, you know. And so that was a blessing. Also, the fact that, you know, when I first got there wasn't very many people of color there. But then we started coming in, and L.C.L. Taylor, who was one of the first Black teachers there in the film department, had created this class called Ethno-Communications, which forced you to think about who you are and where you're from, and to make films about your people's narratives, you know, things like that. And so instead of making films about flower children and things like that, or hippies and things like that, you made films that dealt about cultural things, you know, about the history of, you know, diverse people of color. And so the other thing was that because there was an influx of people who were trying to tell stories about their experience and history, that you had this, you know, reaction toward, you know, Hollywood films and commercial films, and the films that look like, you know, that you're making a film that doesn't necessarily relate to, you know, your environment or your culture. And so, in particular, when they had all these people of color coming in, we had these conversations throughout, you know, all the time about what you should be making and what you should be doing. And so that was an encouraging thing. And I was wanting to, somehow I got in this thing to want to do something that didn't look like, you know, a commercial film. And because you didn't trust it, was a sort of neorealistic sort of notion about commercial films and actors and things. Where you may get the wrong impression, but anyway, you're guided toward this notion that what you're after is a sense of honesty. And the other thing that was very important to me was the fact that I got into documentary films. That's the first thing that I fell into. And I was very lucky to have Basil Wright as a teacher, and the Song of Salon. And I remember being at this crossroads when I was at UCLA, where, you know, they had these in the end of the quarter screenings of the best films out of, you know, in the department. And so I went to a lot of those screenings, and I said, God, I can't make these kind of films. You know, I'm gonna fail, sure enough. You know, because I couldn't relate to them. You know, and but then I drifted over, and I was taking Basil Wright. I mentioned, so I was in his class, so I had a conversation with him about it. You know, and then he had just introduced me to films by Yoris Evans and all these people, Flaherty and Grierson and all those folks, all the people that made documentaries. You know, we created documentaries, I should say, and he told me how he made Song of Salon, you know, and he encouraged me to make my own films and be respectful, respect the subject matter and the people. and things like that. He said that just clicked the light in my head, and said, that's what I should be doing, and how to make these films that are real, and it looks like he just set the camera up in the middle of the street and just shot with like cinema verite, but had a story, beginning, middle, end, and so that was fun and really encouraging to do.
That's cool. And so it sounds like it was kind of the perfect environment for you to be in at that time.
It was because most of us never thought about going into Hollywood making films because we knew we weren't going to be a part of that, that reality, and so we never had this notion or contemplated, when we got here, we're going to get a job and editor and things like that. And everybody at the time, no matter what you were, most of us, because we're people of color, we didn't have anybody that had a history of being in the film industry and made the connections where you can get out and go into being assistant editor and things like that. That opened up years later, but at the time,
right, there like wasn't an old boys network yet.
But then, now it's a whole different ballgame, and so we just made films the way we wanted it, and didn't care about distribution because they didn't have any, and if you didn't have a union seal on your film, you weren't going to get shown, and so that was the reality.
Do you feel like that gave you a certain freedom in like choosing subject matter and how you treated subject matter, like the fact that you weren't worried about distribution?
Yeah, I think it did two things. One, we were interested in making our own films and telling our own stories, and had this habit of, hey, this is our narrative. You've exploited it enough, and we're because I lived in the community, so I was engaged in having these dialogue with folks in the community, barbershop conversations, you name it, still street owner talks, and just friends in general who it was just before the Watts riot, during the civil rights movement and things like that. So a person of color believed that he had a responsibility to not to exploit, surroundings and people, but add to it. It was a sort of notion that you had this illusion that that's what was part of your responsibility, and you owed it to the community, people who were, the salt of the earth, who had a rough time, things like that. And so most of us, we would all the time talk about what we should be doing, and one of the things was that we totally ignored Hollywood to a large extent, which now, most of the young people now are just really into it, more so than ever, and they know how to speak their language, and if you don't know how to do, I didn't care about, like now, I don't watch too much TV or whatever, and so I don't, when I go to an interview or a pitch, I don't have that language, I don't have, that idea, notion of going to a meeting and telling people what they want to hear, I'm always saying something, the opposite, and I can see they're yawning, like, why do we bring this guy in here?
Who is this guy?
I did that, once, and had some very decent agents that sent me over to Warner Brothers to do to talk about a particular film, and it was a Donald Goines story. It's about his life, actually, and I really, I thought that was a really interesting story because it was a guy who knew all about, the streets, but then he was a victim of it, and I thought the irony was so great that this would be interesting. Here's a guy who was street smart, but yet still he was didn't realize what he was doing, in a sense, and so I went to the studio, and they wanted to do a story about a guy who was overcome by drugs and things on and on, and it was this typical thing about showing the worst, and not the fact that this guy had this intuitive knowledge of the street, but yet still, with all of that, he still is caught up in it and suffers from it. So it wasn't kind of like, here we go, the guy is self-destructive kind of thing. It was a whole different ballgame. And so I so I was telling the story what my idea about it, and so this producer character wanted it to be, typical drugs thing and these places where people get drugged out, whatever it is, to have overdoses. I said, no, I said, the community don't want to see that, they've seen enough of that, they don't want to see that. And so he sort of was disappointed, obviously, and so I left him with that, and so he called my agent and said, does Charles want the job, and so she called me and said, do you want the job? I said, well, I want a job, but I can't. She said, well, go back and convince him that what you want to do and all this kind of stuff. So I go back and we have this conversation, and the producer and he starts telling me this story again about how he wants to see these shooting galleries, drug dealers and stuff like that. And I'm like, did I tell you I don't want to do that?
Right.
Something like that, And so I was trying to be, get the job, to some extent. But I hear myself, it wasn't like I wasn't speaking and conscious of speaking, but this thing, this way of seeing things came out. I can hear myself saying the negatives, like why do you want to do this thing? And I couldn't stop myself, And so I left again, just screwed up again. And so I'm not a very good, promoter of myself in many ways, It's just that, you wanna, there's an opportunity to do something, to say something. And you don't see why they can't see the same. It may not be commercial enough, but it'll be a good film, It'll be a decent film. But that's like this, like who was it said, if you want to give a message, go get a job at Western Union, some crazy stuff like that. And so I think it was it Mayor at MGM Web? Someone said that, So anyway, I spoil my own chances, that a lot of times. So
it's not necessarily, well, actually, hey, tying it to marketing, right? It's all about marketing yourself. It's not about saying the right thing. It's about saying things in a certain way.
Yeah. But I always say them in the wrong way. That's my way of dealing in this world, and hurting people and hurting myself in the long run. Because people say, why aren't you making films? I say, I'm trying.
It seems like you gotten a fair number of movies done.
Not really. I mean, I wish it's like, when I was a kid, I was working with my neighbor down the street who was a carpenter, in construction. And I would go to his son who would clean out the back, when people were building houses and things like that, they'll leave all the cement in the bathrooms and tubs and things, they're going to scrape it out and clean it up and make it look decent for the inspectors and whatever it is. Anyway, so I mean, those are like men working, I always admired these guys. They were like, I was like 120 pounds when I was in high school, really not very muscular. I always wanted to be like these guys with these big forearms, with veins running through them like a rope, but I couldn't keep these mixers going or anything like that. So I really learned to respect these guys, and they did it every day, and so they can call themselves the carpenters, but I don't make films every day, and so I've always been hesitant about saying, well, I'm a filmmaker. Yeah, right. You're not like a plumber or a butcher where you do that constantly every day. Here you have to go with your hand out, like what's the guy's name? You gotta have some more crow. What was it? And one of those.
I'll gladly pay you tomorrow for a hamburger today.
No, it was Dick. That's his name. Who did? These poor kids in England. They come to the door.
Oliver.
Yeah.
Hey, can I have some more, please?
Please, sir, may I have some more?
Oh, yeah.
More.
Have some more crow, please. Say, get out of here. Yeah. And so it was one of those kinds. You feel like so you can't get above it. So you just sort of like repeat a lot of those kind of novels and things. Anyway, yeah. But it's been an interesting. I can't complain. With what little I've done, it took me all over the world and things like that. So I'm very happy about that and learned a great deal.
Well, now I'm curious. I realize we're sort of jumping to the future and all the way, follow the arc all the way. And I realize, well, we can go back and talk about the other films and everything you've done. But I'm curious now, How did the most recent movie come about?
First of all, I have to
Oh,
warn you.
I think
I was going to say I have to warn you. I do ramble and I do go back and forth, and so you have to work hard to follow
you're
me a lot of times.
you're in good company.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Okay, we have a lot in common then.
Yes, yeah,
we go off topic sometimes
yeah.
Good for you.
a little
You're not
bit.
very disciplined.
Okay. Wow. That's good. You asked me about some sort of order.
The most recent movie, the pandemic movie. I guess how was it? Did you notice any like differences in the process of shooting it, editing it?
Well, yes. I mean, one Barbara Burney, who it was her idea to do the research and make the story, and invited me to join, and I did because I was interested in the subject matter. A lot of it I didn't know until we did the research on the subject, and it was just, I mean, it was devastating to learn about this particular kind of evil that as a part of racism in this country, you know, and it still exists. And you know, this whole thing about critical race study, whatever, they don't want people to understand what was going on. It's crazy.
Yeah.
You know, how is people gonna be different or change? You know, if they don't understand my part in it. You know, you know, not saying that you did it, but the history of this country and why you think that you know, Black people of color are a threat to society. I mean, there's so much that one can learn. I mean, I've learned so much about just being like in South Central, how, you know, when they had lead in gas, you know, and also in the ground where they had all this industrial places where they built things for the army. And when that was over, they just left all this pollution in the ground where it's like Jordan High School and some of these projects that people live in. That stuff comes up through the ground, you know, and it affects young kids.
And that's like in the water table at that point, right? Yeah.
It's crazy. And they built just to look like there was progress. There's a park up on 120 something near Avalon in Central. And there's a big pond. It looks beautiful, but it's polluted. And they have a daycare center right next to it. You know, and there's a little sign that's about the size of a postage stamp says, "Don't fish here, don't eat it in it." And people sort of ignore it because they, you know, need food or whatever. But and you wonder how come kids are the way they are and have a lack of attention, you know, and all this kind of stuff. It's because of all this pollution and stuff. And they have to deal with that, and it's a part of poverty and everything else. But they don't. I mean, that's the real story.
Oh, are you still in LA?
Yeah, I am. Yep, right here.
And
part of LA.
So I'm sorry, I jumped to the future, the present. We can go back now. So
okay.
We have so many movies to cover.
Yeah.
Right ahead. I'll follow you and just, you know.
Yeah, definitely. So when you moved from, or at least as I understand it, like from Killer of Sheep through My Brother's Wedding, you kind of had, like, you were kind of just doing your own thing for the most part. You weren't dealing with a lot of producers. And what kind of things in the process changed when studios got involved in the early?
Well, they started dictating everything. Everything was, you had to explain everything, you know, and it can be
to like the executives,
to everybody, you know, the actors, all of them, and you know, and one of the things that was so ironic in a way was, you know, I used to raise pigeons when I was coming in junior high school and high school, and I used to raise showbirds, you know, tumblers and rollers, and you know, and most of the kids did, and you would, you know, watching you stay all day, watching fly, you know, just looking up in the air, watching birds. And they were quite expensive birds. And, you know, and when you look back, you say, how did I get like $200 to pay for a pair of birds, you know?
Wait, it's $200 for?
Oh, more than that. It could be, I mean, the showbirds, they're actually pigeons, people want to buy them, you know? And you travel all over the pigeon farms and read these pigeon magazines and
that was like, that was really popular when you were a kid.
Oh yeah. Wow, I used to throw papers to buy birds, you know, and so Yeah, and you say, and they weren't like you know, like in New York they have these common birds, commons. So these were like fantail muffies and things like and PRC rollers and you name it, you know.
Right.
And we'd get them and throw them up in the air, watch them fly around and tumble. And then what's made it really awful was that, you know, literally you can buy birds for like a couple $100 a bird or a pair. And then someone will come in the middle of the night and steal your pigeons, you know, they break into the cage and you will wake up in the morning, go outside, the cage is empty, you know. They took all the birds, you know, you would have like 15 pairs of birds, whatever it is, you know, they're all gone.
So there were like a lot of pigeon theft issues.
Oh, that were lot. And you would build these cages. I mean, they were stronger than Fort Knox, you know, they would be this thick with 2x4s and all sorts of things. You dig and put a foundation under where people couldn't dig up under to go under the cage. And it was all sorts of, but it was fascinating, you know. And when you look back, you say, God, I paid this much money for these birds. it was fun. Anyway, I'm sorry, I go off on.
I thought you were trying to make a point. I was asking.
Oh yeah,
about,
I was.
I'm glad you
studio
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I was. I apologize. This was it. When I did The Sleep with Anger, there's a kid with pigeons thrown up in the air, and I put in the script that they were rollers, you know, and the kid was watching the pigeons tumble, you know, and so we go to a completion bond person, this elderly gentleman who was sitting up there, you know, do this. And for someone who's raised pigeons, it's like, what kind of question is that? It's like, how do you make a dog bark? He does it. It's in his DNA, you know. You can't. But it's simple for us to understand because we see it all the time, you know. But for a person who doesn't know anything about pigeons, you know, they look and say, "What does he mean by pigeons tumbling and rolling? And how is he going to make them do it?" I don't have that problem, you know. It's a natural thing they do. Those kind of pigeons.
So they thought they were going to have to hire like an animal handler.
No. Even though we had an animal handler there who was very careful. And every time I pick up a pigeon, they'll run over there, look at, you know, and watch me and like. And I was like, lady, I know I used to raise pigeons, you know. Before I went to elementary school, I had pigeons, you know, and so you couldn't convince. I can understand because people, if they know anything about them, they can be very cruel and hard, you know. And pigeons are delicate, some of them, you know. But anyway, I had to convince this guy that the pigeons, they do that, and we argue about this for a very long time. And that was if I didn't convince him that I could make the film with that, I couldn't put the scene in or some crazy stuff. And so he was arguing so much, I got to the point where I was about to say, forget it. You know, we won't have pigeons. You know, anything, we won't have pigeons. And so finally, he gave in, you know, and said, okay, turn into the next page. What are you gonna do about this? You know, and it's like, and that's something when you're independent, you don't have to do that kind of stuff. You don't have to do this anybody, you know, and you know, and you can just get in your little Volkswagen van and just make about 3 or 4 moves a day without having a problem, you know. But when you do this studio films or feature films with money, you know, they look at, well, you can only make 2 moves a day, and you have to put everything, consolidate everything. And rather than having, you know, the opportunity to create an environment, because you don't have to, like, you know, if you're going to move, they want you to have everything within that within walking distance, you know. So you may have a beautiful scene, a facade or something, you know, some distance away, but no, they want you to do it right there where you can just take a flatbed or something like that, or you know, and just put all the lights on.
So they want you to do it like all on a lot.
Yeah, or something like that, the closest thing, you know, or have the next building right down through the 2 doors down, you know, and so you say, well, it doesn't. No, I want this location over here. No, you can't have it there because you know you have to get the crew and everybody and move it down, and that's a whole, you know, 2 hours, whatever it is, and you need that to put that in the scene, you know, to you know, to shoot it at somewhere where you can save that hour and a half move, whatever it is, and so you're limited what the film looks like because of that, you know. And then you can't have a lot of people in it because you have to pay them these union wages, you know. And so it's like, well, I need more people because you wanted to make it like a city, and not a city, but, you know, a community.
Yeah.
And so it's all of these limitations you have to figure out how to get around. That's that. And then, they want actors that can bring in money, so you just can't have your friends and people like that involved in it.
Right.
And so it really changes everything. Well, actors, I come to appreciate actors, and because when I was doing Killer Sheep, I had an actor who was we had shot footage in the beginning, and then as we're shooting, he got ill, and so I needed him for the day, next day or so, but he couldn't come, and his excuse was, "Well, can you get someone else?" And we already shot some stuff, and it was hard for him to understand. You just can't switch actors,
Right.
Yeah, and
Right.
so, but that was one of the the things. You weren't paying anyone no outrageous price, so you can tolerate it.
Right.
Well, I don't understand. Okay, no problem. Just come tomorrow, whatever it is. But it was, and then when you work with actors, you get this sort of, having studied surrealism, neorealism, whatever. It's this notion that non-actors are better, but then you find that when you're with a production, you need actors who can make adjustments like that.
I know you've made a lot of films in the last 15, 20 years or so for Disney and a few other places, kind of intended for television. Do you feel like over time you've kind of figured out how to navigate the system, or no?
Yes.
Okay, so do you feel like working on the pandemic movie was kind of a welcome break?
Yeah, it is, because you don't have the sort of tension behind trying to convince somebody that you know what you're doing, and the story that they want to tell is not the one you want to tell, and it doesn't work, and so you don't have the frustrating moments of worrying about, oh God, how I'm going to do this. And
when you write a script, I always kind of wonder with Killer Sheep, how detailed was the script that you went in with shooting?
Well, it was storyboarded all the way through.
It was all okay.
So because I needed, well, one of the good things at UCLA was they were trying to teach you how to save the economical.
Yeah.
So you go through this period of storyboarding a lot of things, and so you can sort of shoot that, and you don't have to have this excess. But again, you find later on that's not the best way to do it. You find
it's really surprising to me because it feels very spontaneous.
But that's what you want to get. I mean, you want to get this like it's alive, and then you start developing it. What's best is allowing the actors to feel the environment and work within it, and not tell them you stand here and do that. I mean, when film was slow, where we had to stand in your light, marking things like that. Now you can walk all over the place, and it's still lit, decent. And so a lot of that had to do with, okay, stay on your mark, whatever it is, and so you don't go dark, whatever. But no, you learn very quickly how to, let, this freedom, this letting actors create, and create an environment for them to use that space in a familiar way that they, that they understand this is what I do,
Yeah, like kind of, it's more heads working on it, right? Like you kind of get what they can bring to the project.
Oh yeah, like when we were doing, I was working with Dasil Kim Gibson on America Becoming, another documentary, and we were shooting how people, immigrants, view America and English as a second language and all of that, and we were shooting these Vietnamese and Laotian people in different areas, and so we were at this. We were at this meat packing place, and this it was I think a Vietnamese person, and so we were shooting, and you know how you want to take a B-roll or something, and so you have them, well, for editing purposes, you want them to do this and that, and so there was this person who I said, why don't you go out and do in the garden? Let's say you're digging in the garden, doing something in the garden. And so he looked at me and just said, okay. And then I knew there was something wrong with, he's looking like, So I said, oh, is there anything wrong? And he said, well, as a Vietnamese person, I wouldn't do this as a man. And I said, well, do what you do, you know, and because that would be authentic. That would be rather than imposing something just for the sake of editing, you know, making a cut work. I said, no, I want you to do what you would normally do, you know, without me, you know. And so, and I learned that because of that incident, when I was in Africa doing the struggle for liberation about Semioma, there was another similar situation, like where you learn about culture, and that helps you understand a lot about directing and so forth. There was this young man whose aunt died, and you know, so he comes home from work. His uncle tells him that, you know, Aunt so and so died, but because of timing and stuff like that, you want him, as soon as he walk in the door in America, as soon as he walk in the door, you say, oh, you know, so and so died. You know, you wouldn't do that there. He said, no, what you do is if let's say his aunt died, he comes home and his uncle's there, he'll tell him all these stories, start telling him these stories about his aunt. You know, or you know, Aunt so-and-so was this and that, and she did this, she had this lovely honor. And it'd take a while for him to get to the point where he would say, you know, she died today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so with us, you know, it's like, okay, walks in because, you know, you're trying to save every frame, you know. It's like, okay, walks in, okay, she died. What? You know, dead, forget about it. But there, it's like, it's this cultural thing that not interferes, but it plays a part in everything.
It's almost like it's in reverse order, right? Because like that's kind of what happens at a memorial service, but the first thing you do is you go and you say like, I'm sorry for your loss or something like that.
No, it's always a human element involved in respect and a way of doing things that we forgot about how to do, you know. And so you can appreciate that, you know, and to me, it's more dramatic, you know, because you look at the person as a human being, you remember her or him, whatever it is. And it's not about how economics play a part in it. You know, we got to get this on CNN, whatever it is.
Time is money.
Yeah. And it's always about, like when you're doing a film here, a lot of times is, you know, you get the idea, okay, you start developing it, and then immediately after you get the script, they want to go into production if it's okay. And then, but not only that, but they already assigned the air date for it. And so you have to keep, you know, now you really have to deliver it, you know, and there's no consideration for anything except meeting these air dates and whatever it is, you know. And so what could be a very interesting way of looking at life, you know, is cut short. And so, but that's one of the bad things about, you know, this constant commercial impact on things, and lack of respect for whatever.
Yeah, like the cutting is it's like very rapid. Everything's kind of in a visual shorthand. And then
you said, well, yeah, it's like, does it make any sense that you don't have a story, but you have all these explosions and stuff, and you know, and car chases, and what's the point of getting to that, you know? And so we have some crazy mixed up values. I don't know. I can't say anything.
I mean, it almost seems like it's split into two sides, right? Because everyone has a camera on them now. So like a lot of things that I think I used to mostly consider as like things I would just see in avant-garde or kind of challenging film. They kind of either, I mean, I guess sort of naturally they come into this sort of video vernacular that shows up on the internet. And so I feel like a lot of the commercial production, it's like going in the complete opposite direction. It's kind of like large, big budget, like operatic fantasies.
Well, it's crazy. I don't understand it. Like my son, for example, he's in the film as well, and we'd go places. You know, he would tape everything. He'd have his camera, his phone or something like that. He'll order food, you know, and the people would bring the food to, you know, the table. He'd take his camera, click, 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 and he's mailing it to somebody, you know.
There he is now.
And so, yeah, and so he would mail it to other folks, to other kids. He said, and I said, what are you doing that for? Are they seriously interested in what you be? I mean, everything is documented, whatever it is, and it's amazing, and I just, I like to have some privacy or something.
Yeah.
But they just like, everything is like, it's, I don't know, I wouldn't be necessarily interested in someone sending me whatever they're eating, like a bowl of soup, whatever it is. I've seen that many times.
So there's
I know what a bowl of soup looks like.
Yeah.
So there's no chance of a Charles Burnett TikTok.
No, I didn't even know what it was until and my kids know what it is. But I'm too old fashioned. I don't. I can't keep up with that stuff. There's too many things there's too many things I don't have time for that I should do, should be studying, talking to some people, but it's a whole different era now, I don't know.
I was gonna say, full confession, I did 2 days ago take a picture of food. I actually totally understand. I don't understand people taking pictures of every meal they have and every morsel and all that. But it was a birthday cake that somebody had made me, and it was beautiful. And
that's
I had
different. That's different.
Right. There was a lot of meaning behind it.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I don't understand why. Yeah, why? Okay, you're at a restaurant. Why are you telling me?
Right. I guess there's like a line between, because I've known some people where they're like really into cooking, and so like when they send me the picture of the food, it's like I send them a picture of like an artsy picture, whatever. And but yeah, there's sometimes there's just like I'm at McDonald's, like for some reason you don't believe I'm at McDonald's, I'm gonna send a picture of the McDonald's food, right? Like,
but if anything, why would you send a picture of McDonald's, as bad as that stuff is,
Yeah.
It's like, that's really, I don't know.
It's an especially interesting looking French fry. It's not just any ordinary French fry.
Yeah, it still kill you. That's one good thing of taking a picture of that, and you can see I bought a fry at McDonald's, and so you can see why I'm like this, whatever it is, and, like the French fry stuck here. You see it got large in my throat. It wasn't like this before. But no, my son, I'll tell you what happened with him. This is hard. He wanted to be a person film. So I was driving to where we were driving, and as soon as he get in his car, he'd take his cell phone out and start dialing people, whatever it is, and talking and texting. And I said, Jonathan, you should be looking at all the stuff passing by. How the light is on the tree here and then, something like that. And he said, yeah, okay. I said, but you want to be a cameraman. You want to be this and that. And the only thing he says, yeah, and go right back to texting people. And then what made me really mad was, I was at the airport. A guy flew in, and he's going to pick me up. And so I called him. I said, I'm at the airport and at United and so forth. And so I'm standing out there waiting. He said, I'll be right there. Okay, waiting. It takes forever, So he's parked across the street. So I said, I'll go over there. I'll come over there. No. You stay right there. I'll be right there. I come over. So I'm waiting. Time passes, and I can't move because I think if I move now, he's going to pass me, whatever it is, and we're going to miss each other. So I'm locked where I am, and so this goes on for a while. And so I'm getting angrier and angrier, I say, God, these kids, and so I'm standing closer to this curb, and there's all this room in the back. So I keep looking around and see, make sure, but he's right across the street, supposedly, Getty corner. And so finally, I see him coming. Now, he's supposed to be over here, and he comes from this way. And I let him walk almost past me. I said, where have you been? Where have you been? I've been right. I didn't see you. I said, I was right here. How come you not see me? Because he was busy doing this texting thing, And how are you going to be observant? You have, if you want to be a photographer or a writer, whatever it is, you have to observe people. and things and composition. You can't tell these kids nothing, I give up.
I mean, I was doing like a series of photos for my social media account where it was just like weird screenshots for a while of just like like when you get two news headlines that like really should not be next to each other, something like that. Just kind of seeing how far I could take that, but yeah, it was a lot less rewarding than going out and actually like photographing, the things outside of my phone. But I don't know if there's a moral there, but it's a thing that happened.
I used to photograph constantly, and I picked this up from my dad. He always walked around with a camera, one of those Canon, really sturdy camera and all that. And I grew up a little bit with that. And then now even, when it was the camera phones, and I used to take pictures constantly, and I saw everything. It wasn't even so much seeing, okay, let me figure out the any kind of the techniques or anything. So take a picture of this and take a picture of this and take a picture of this and take a picture. So it's a little different. And then I finally realized well, I guess it wasn't just the phone. I carried a camera around, and I figured out about 10 years ago, it's like, you know what? I don't need to take a picture of everything. Let me actually be here and enjoy it and enjoy the moment. And then if there's something that I really want to preserve, then I'll go and I'll take a picture and I'll focus on exactly how to get it exactly the way that I wanted to represent it. So, and sometimes I wish I'd taken pictures of something. Like I remember, this thing from a year ago, like, oh gosh, I wish I could show it. So I'll have to describe it instead. But it helps me appreciate then, when I am taking a picture, it's much more with intention. But although I am also guilty of, instead of like looking around and saying and enjoying the view and enjoying everything, I'm looking down at my phone and doing this. I won't pretend I don't do that. I just try not to always do that.
No, I talking on the phone is the worst thing because every time, every time the phone rings, it makes me jump, and stuff like that. I got to get out of habit because one of the things is this fear of every time it rings, it's bad news,
Oh yeah, I have that too. Yeah, I hate answering the phone unless I've like screened it.
Yeah. What happened now? Who's in the hospital? Who's this or that? I hate that. I was talking to Haile Garima, and he was talking about how he doesn't have a cell phone. It frustrates because you try to call him, he doesn't answer, even if it's a regular house, he doesn't. And I can really enjoy that. I can really see that because, people call, because I started going to bed early, like around 8 or 9. And one of my friends called, he stays with like 10 or 11, and he'll call up like it's in the middle of the afternoon, all this energy. And you say, man, you want to say, don't you know, I got to get up and pretend like I'm working in the morning or whatever it is.
You were saying earlier, I also jump when the phone rings. So actually I prefer texting for a number of reasons. I can't stand the phone.